Good morning everybody, welcome to another Sunday of refreshers. We're carrying on with our refreshing and revisiting some of the things that we did really early in the piece for all of those newbies that have come on board, and hopefully you get something out of it. So today we're going to finish off with, or continue with, the desktop box. The first refresher was our little pencil holder. So that was the first refresher. Second one is going to be our desktop box and our secrets box, basically because they're the same box, just one smaller than the other. But yeah, so we're going to continue with those, and we do the little bits and pieces. Now the refresher was all about expanding a joint, so that's what we did in the beginning, how to expand the joint. So if you've missed it, go back to the first part of this or last week. And you'll see how we go about using the variable joint spaces to expand the joint. So that was what it's all about. So today it's basically getting the top and the bottom in the box, cut the top off it, glue it together, all those sorts of things. So we'll go through that. Now, somebody said last week they wanted plans, or are there plans available? Yes, there are. So I have them here. I'll show you them in a second. But one other thing, there was a question last week about my little height adjuster pad. They are not part of the kits. For those of you who are purchasing a kit, if you want one of these, you need to order it with, it's not on the website, but you need to order it or mention in the comments when you put your order in that you want a height adjusting pad. So, and I will give you one. Oh, well, I'll sell you one. Sorry. They're $5, so somebody has to make them. Anyhow, the boxes. So cross over to Pammy now, and we'll have a look at, first of all, we'll have a look at, these are the boxes, right? They're just a lift-off lid. They're very simple, very easy to do. They have a liner in them, which is removable. So you can take them out and you can put them back in. They've just got a little miter joint on the corners. They're all the same, like just a removable box, and something that's very, very simple and easy to make. But as you can see, they look pretty, and they actually do work very well for building your skill level. So as you can see, we've done lots of different things to them, and today we're going to continue with that, as I said before. Now, the plans, these are the plans that I have. Haven't yet written up the instructions on how to do it, but most people who get these plans can actually follow along and build themselves a box anyway. So, the secrets box, which is this little one here. Why do we call it a secrets box? Because it's only big enough to hold a secret. Or something very, very small. So, it's got an instruction, a cutting list. Now, the cutting list is dependent on A10. That's the dovetails that are in it. If you want to use a different, get that out of the way. If you want to use a different size dovetail, well then of course you have to vary your sizes as well. So that's your exploded view of the lid. Once you've cut it off, that's what it looks like. And then of course you've got your measurements for all your panels and so forth. The internal componentry is pretty easy to make. I'll show you how that goes probably next week. But we've got, again, an exploded view of the thing. The desktop box, which is this one here. So it's fairly simple, fairly easy. And again, goes through the same sort of processing. It has the cutting list for the A10. It has the, just trying to get it so that it's not all glossy and shiny. There you go. You've got the exploded view of the whole box, the internal componentry and the outside framework. And we go over to the lid. Now the lid is not added to that part of the exploded view. It's a separate thing. But we built the whole thing in one piece. So measurements, internal componentry, that's the sleeves, and that's about it. So that's what we have. Now, if you wish to purchase those, please call me and I will organise something for you.
I have to say thank you to John Lafferty for those wonderful plans.
John is our go-to man for the plans. Does a wonderful job. Okay. Now, here's what we did last week. Last week we built the framework for the desktop box. Now, I did it in this one. This is the one I did on the show, but I've had to do a second one because I got excited and I had to cut the feet in it. Now, what we're going to do this week is we're going to cut the feet in it. You can see the feet on there. The other thing I've done with this one is I've cut the two panels, the top panel and the bottom panel. So I'm going to address that as well. So it's lots of different things that have happened to it, but it's all the same processing. Now, one of the things that I find advantageous about doing a simple box like this is you can do lots of them at the same time. Now, I cut lots of material for a whole heap of boxes, and while I had the jig set up to cut the dovetails, which we did on that one there, this material is exactly the same size, I cut them as well. So I've cut all 4 boxes at the same time, and that, if you're building or if you're buying or if you're cutting boxes to sell at markets and you want to do lots of them, it's a good idea to do them all at once. And this is what it looks like. So you end up with all sorts of bits and pieces. You need to make sure that you mark everything and all your boxes go together. You'll notice on the bottom of this one here, you can see I've got a little number 7. And it's on the bottom of that one. So all of those 4 parts go together. All of these parts go together. The same with those 2 little boxes as well. Anyway, let's get on with some work. The first thing I have to do here is I have to cut feet in these parts here. And the feet are going to look like that. So I'm just going to cut that section out of the bottom of the box. Now, when you pick up the box, or when you have cut your box and pulled it apart and just laid it like this, top and bottom look exactly the same. So the thing to do is to mark where you're going to cut. You'll see the joints are laid out. You've got the fat joint at the top of the box and of course the small joint. If you don't lay it out properly, what you're going to do is end up cutting a foot in the top of the box. So you need to make sure that you mark, and this is the bottom here, just put some sort of mark on there to say that's where I'm going to cut. Start creating these sorts of habits because they actually do work. Let's just put one out of the way.
Graham, excuse me, Graham Bell has asked, do we have plans for the sliding lid box? It's one of the, not in this format, but it's one of the ones that we haven't actually done yet.
No, I
haven't. Lid box.
No, I haven't done a sliding lid box. So yeah. I must
so
investigate
thanks, Graham.
that.
Yeah, we'll get on top of that. It was in. We have it in DVD. It's an old video, and we had it in book form, but we didn't get a reprint of it because it needed to be rejigged and updated. So that hasn't been done.
Yeah. Okay. Funny you should ask that, Graham. This is the router bit I'm going to use. Now, last week I said I bought these really fancy compression router bits to do this task. and I used it, and they're very, very successful, but they're very, very expensive. And if you want to use a compression bit, by all means do. This is the router bit that we use. This is the one that we sell. So I'm going to use this one because it's the one that we have at hand. Actually, that's not right. That's an 8mm. TSRW12, this is the one.
This is better.
Here's a trap for the unwary. You need to make sure that you read. I've just noticed, this is something that I didn't notice. TSRW12 comes in 8mm, 3/8. This is 1/2 inch. So if you have a router that carries that, by all means use it, but you need an 8mm reducing collet, and they're hard to come by. So TSRW12 is the go, but you need a 10mm. Sorry,
1/2 inch.
1/2 inch shank. Otherwise you're chasing around after bits and pieces. Okay, so we need a fence for this. The first thing I need to do is adjust my height. When I adjust the height, I'm just above the piece of timber. It's not important, the height, just need to be above it so that we get a clean cut all the way along our piece of material. So, the fence. Now my fence has a number of different bits out of it. This one here is a bit out of whack. I've chipped a bit off it, so I've worked on the other side, which is there. So that's going to fit like so. Lock it in. Now how far do we cut in? That's the important thing. So we have to just pick up one of these little boxes here. When you look at the bottom of the box, you can see that there is a fair amount of material. Pointer. There's a fair amount of material at the bottom here to support the base. So you want that to occur. So the distance from the foot to the top edge of the cutout, okay, we've got 6mm to play with in here. What we want is probably 3mm, 4mm if you want, just at least a couple of millimeters. Now the pencil box is not a heavy used box, so a couple of millimeters is adequate. Now my LARK tool, this is Graham, this is where you use your little LARK tool. I'm going to set mine at 3mm. So I've set my depth at 3mm. So put it up against, and the important thing here is just make sure your router bit is 90 degrees to your fence. Set that in. Pull that off there. Okay, so that's my depth set. Okay, just need to lock that in.
So Nate Coyle wants to know what's a good jig to start on.
A good jig. Who's asked that?
Nathan Coyle.
Oh, Nathan. A10 is generally the one that most people start with. It cuts material between 5 and 13mm thick, and as you can see, most of this stuff is in that range of material. So all of my boxes here that I have on the desk are all between 5 and 13 millimeters. So really good one to start with if making small boxes.
Yeah.
Okay, now back to the task at hand. When we're cutting a square box, when we're cutting a rectangular box, I'll show you that in a second, you'll notice that feet distance from the outside edge to the inside of the foot is the same on both parts. Okay, so that distance there is the same as that one there. So everything is set on a square box. And when you sit the box down, it looks quite nice no matter which way you're looking at it. You can see that it looks correct. Now, with a rectangular box, the distance from here on the short side is shorter than the distance from there to there. Okay, so that's the long edge, so it has a long foot. Short edge has a short foot. Visually, it looks better when you have a short foot on the short side and a long foot on the long side. Visually, that's my opinion. You may think it's different, but I always make sure that on long edges I have a long foot, on the short edges I have a short foot. Now, when we measure, got a ruler here somewhere. When we measure, this is the bit I'm going to cut. So I lay that on the bench like so, so that the inside of the box is up, and I measure on the left hand edge. And I only do this once. Don't have to do it to all the parts. So a mark there. So that's 20 millimeters. Now, it's not a very big box. So left hand edge, let's say 30 mil. So there's 10 mil variation. 20 mil on that one, 10 mil on 30 mil on this one. Okay. Now, they're measurements that I've been using for many, many years, and you'll set your own measurements. So you have to work out what you think is right. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a stop up. I have one here somewhere. Okay, now your stop should be on the right hand side of the router bit. Alright? The router bit spins in this direction. So what it's going to do is going to kick the piece of timber back that way. What we need the stop for is to prevent that from happening. So when I set the fence up, I set up my stop and I move my measurement to the left hand side of the cutter, because it's going to cut onto the piece of timber. Right? It's going to cut this way. We don't want it to kick along because that will damage this part here. If we stop it from happening, what we can do is then just push in and then we can move along. Now, why have I only put on one mark? Just have to lock this in place. Make sure it's well and truly locked in so it's not going to move. Make sure everything is tight. Now what happens is when we push that on, it's going to start the cut. So the cut will start in this direction. It will come in this way. So you get a nice clean shoulder right where your mark is. But you must have it on the left hand side of the router bit. Okay? Now it's not a dyed in the wool measurement or marking or place to put it. If it's a little bit out, really doesn't matter, so long as that section there is longer than the short piece. Okay, ears on everybody and we'll cut. Now you'll notice that I didn't go all the way to what would perceivably be the right spot to stop. Reason being, if you look at the top edge of this here, you can see there's lots of little bits of tear out. Now if you're using something that's a little bit furry, a little bit more likely to tear, you'll probably end up with a whole lot of tear out on the end of the foot. We don't want that to happen. And you can also see here, you can see right there we have a nice clean shoulder as the start of our foot, which means no work to be done. Now the fact that we've used a spiral bit has given us a perfectly smooth surface there as well. So very little sanding to be done afterwards. Now, to get the rest of it done, we flip our piece of timber over and start again. And when you start again, you're going to get the same result here and the same measurement because you have a stop there. Okay, ears on. Now because we have the stop there, the measurement here is the same as the measurement up here. Because we started here and went this way, we've got a clean shoulder. Because we started there and went this way, we've got a clean shoulder there as well. And because we've used our LARK tool and we've set our depth, we can see that we've got lots of material for the bottom of the box to sit on. Okay, so there's plenty of support there. Just a matter of rubbing off the chalk mark now. We don't need that. Now, we do that again with the other piece, and then we readjust for the small bit. Okay, so next bit, chalk mark against the fence. Now the short bits. And you might notice with this one here, we've got this lovely clean shoulders, and it's cut very, very clean. Now, some timbers don't like this sort of cutting, and you'll end up with this sort of thing, a little bit of burn mark. That's easy enough to get rid of. Just roll up a piece of sandpaper, and you can just work in there and just sand off the burn mark. Remember, it is the foot, so it comes out quite easily. That's just a bit of 180, and we'll get through and we'll do them. You can see it's happened on this one as well. Sometimes that's caused by a blunt router bit. In this case, it's the type of timber. This material is quite susceptible to burning. So that's that job done. Our next job now is to fit all the components. And get the box glued together. We don't need that. Probably need to shorten that bolt some stage. Don't think that anymore. Okay, this is what the box will look like. Now I have marked the corners that go together, just make sure that you put them together. And now you can see the feet actually show it quite nicely. Alright, measurements. When we measure, bottom of the box, bottom of the trench is 5 millimeters. If we came across here, I've got 182 millimeters. If I added 5, would be 187, would be the length of my top and bottom. I don't want that to happen. Basically what I want to do is I want to make a little gap around each of the panels so that they are actually able to move or expand due to humidity changes. So I've got 187, 191 will be my length. So I'll write that on the end here. And the width of my piece, I've got 87, so 91, 191 by 91. Now they're the measurements that I need for my top and bottom. What I've done here is I've made or dressed up some material to suit the two different boxes that I've done. Like this one here is the walnut one. This one is walnut and Honduran mahogany, and I've cut 2 panels already and I've rounded over the edges. I'm just going to show you how to do that. What I've done is I've dressed up a number of bits of material. I've got Honduran mahogany, walnut, jacaranda, that's jacaranda as well in a wider section, silver ash, this one here is coachwood, and of course some rose mahogany. Now that's all base material, and what I do is I dress it down so that I've got plenty of it for lots of different boxes. You can see the different colours in the timbers that I use, and I start to look at varying the materials to suit the boxes that I've done. Okay, so this box here, Honduran mahogany and rose mahogany. So I could either use Honduran mahogany in the bottom, and or rose mahogany in the bottom. So I can have a dark bottom or a light bottom, depending on what I want to do, and a complementary timber for the top panel. Now, I could use a piece of rose mahogany, or I could use something completely different, something like red Banksia, which matches up quite nicely. It looks quite nice. It'll look nice when it's got a finish on it with a rose mahogany. So choose your timbers wisely and dress up your timbers ready to go. Now all of that's been dressed up to and sanded to 600, so it's all ready, finished, ready to go, because I know whatever I do from here on is going to be pretty much spot on for the box. So I'm going to do a light bottom. So I want a piece of material 191 by 91 for that, and I'm going to use, here's another timber that I haven't shown, European beech. Now that's got a little bit of colour and character to it. You can see it's got lots of medullary rays showing.
Well, it's a bit hard to pick up. Stop moving it.
Yeah, it doesn't do anything for me, considering that I've got this colour on the bottom. They don't sort of match together. Although, if you think they do, by all means use it. Using a piece of walnut, that doesn't do the trick either. So, keep that aside. This isn't too bad, because we have some reds in here, we have some reds in the rose mahogany as well. So I might use a piece of that. Okay, let's go cut. 191 by 91. So over to the drop saw. Somebody's decided to do their mowing this morning. 191. Now cut them both at the same time. Makes it so much easier. Flush on the end. So ears on. Cut them both at the same time. Now I want the width. Sometimes it's necessary to dress up the edge of it first before you actually cut the width. I'm going to do that. Dress up this bit. I want it at 91. Just making sure I flush on the edge. Flush on the end. Start across to my mark. The laser in these Festool saws are absolutely brilliant. Now there's my two pieces of material already cut. Now what I need to do is I need to round over all my edges. So we're going to go to my radius jig. Take that back to the bench. And what I want to do here is just take the furry edges off. The diameter of that curve is the same diameter as the router bit we use to cut the trench. This is the router bit that we used, and the diameter of that is the same as the radius on that, or the diameter on that. So now we try. So I need to get a fence, get something. Lock that in place. Remember, when you're pulling things apart, support. Don't want to be ripping things apart. If I muscle this apart, there's a good chance I'll damage the joints. Now the idea is to fit one panel. If your base panel fits, your top panel will fit, because they're both cut at the same time and they're both exactly the same size. And now we have a nice fit. And what I look for when I fit the base is I make sure I haven't got any gaps around my material, so the length is right, there's no gap on the length. And when we look at the end of the box, there's no gap on the width. If there is, actually there is a little gap there. It's probably a little bit too wide. I might just give that a little bit of freedom. Might just take a trim off the edge of it. Do the same with this one because they're both the same size. Make sure everything's flush. All I'm doing is pushing up against the saw blade. I want to take off a tiny bit, and the kerf on the saw is all we're taking off. Let's try that again. Length is perfect. Now my width is perfect. Okay, that's a better fit. I don't have any gaps or anything like that. I'm going to squeeze it together, it will work. Alright, now we have to fit this piece. So what we have is we have a trench in here. The bottom of the trench is 10 millimeters from the top. The thickness of our piece of material is 10 millimeters. What I need is 4 millimeters to fit in my trench. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a rebate on the top edge, choose the best bit for the top. They look pretty much the same to me. So I use that as the top. Mark this as top. You see, there's a fault in there, so I'll use this one as the top. That's my top, so that's the bit I'm going to cut around the outside edge of that. Now, on our box, this is the lid. You can see I've got a rebate all the way around there. When I turn the box over, you can see we're flush on the inside of the box. So it's nice and flush. Okay, so we're only cutting one side of the piece, and that will be the top side. The router bit we're using is our panel raising bit. Now the panel raising bit is actually designed for this task. What we've done with the router bit, or what was done in the beginning, was, lost my pencil, the angle of the cutting tooth is set at 8 degrees. Normally they're nearly vertical, probably 1 degree. But this one's set at 8 degrees. What that will do, it will give you a nice clean shearing cut across the piece of timber. And that will minimise the amount of sanding that you'll have to do. So, with that in mind, what I need to do is set my LARK tool at 6mm and height of my router bit. Okay, so I'm going to cut 6mm out of there, which will leave me 4mm, and hopefully a fit. You may need to adjust this during the process, but if you do it lots of times, you'll find you can get it pretty much right every time. Okay, now my fence has the same shape cut out of it. You can see in the fence itself, that's the same shape as my router bit. Okay, so we're going to use this fence. I'm going to work on this side, so I'm going to turn my bench around so that I can get the camera on it. Show you what goes on. Now, when I adjust the measurement, the depth I have, I'll put my ruler down somewhere. The depth I have in the box is 5mm into the bottom of the trench. Now, to get clearance of that radius, I need to add to my depth 3mm. So 8mm is the amount of material that I'm going to cut off in here. If you have less than that, what you'll find is the lid will bind there and you won't get a good fit. So 90 degrees, bring my fence across. Measure to the outside of the router bit 8mm, and if it doesn't fit, that's fine, because we can adjust it as we go. Now sometimes it's a good idea, if you haven't done this for a while, or haven't done lots of it, it's always a good idea to do a tester piece. And when we cut the end of the grain first. So I want my push block. For those of you who haven't seen these before, we're developing these little push blocks for people who are using routers lots. They're only a little narrow one, they're really good. Okay, ears on everybody. Test it on these, it's the same size. Okay. So now you can see that's how far it's going to go. I need to actually lift that a bit. I've taken a little bit too much off, but that's not a problem there. Just drop it down a little bit. Cut the other end. Pull that box apart, so put this on here. Just want to take one side off it. And when you put this together, take the base out, because if it's a bit of a tight fit, I haven't taken the side out yet, so it's not going to go all the way down, but it will fit. It will go in there nicely. and we're all good. So now it's just the two sides I should say. So put it away. And so now we have a perfect fitting lid. It's flush on the top, so there's very little sanding to do on the top. We have a nice even gap all the way around. And we're sitting flush on the inside of the box. It's nice and clean all the way around the inside of the box. So just a matter now is glue up time. So I've got 10 minutes. Actually, what I might do, instead of gluing up, I might spend the 10 minutes and cut the top off another box that I made earlier to show you how to cut the top off. You can see, I'll just reassemble it. No, I won't reassemble it. You can see I have my expanded joint. The distance from here to here is probably 1/3 of that. Okay, 1/3 of the box. So you've got 2/3 there, 1/3 there. That's generally where I'll cut that box off through there. So, one of the boxes I made earlier, this one here, this is New Guinea rosewood. It's quite a nice timber, it's easy to work with. As you can see, it's a golden colour compared to this one. So if you're into flashy stuff, probably this one. If you're into something that's a little bit more staid, you can see this one here, I've used New Guinea rosewood for the whole of the box. So let me cut the top off that box and show you how I go about that. So normally I would glue that together. We can do that next week, or I can do that before next week, and I'll show you what happens with the boxes after that. So I'm going to keep the fence there, we need that. How's our comments going?
Good.
Now the router bit I'm going to use to cut the top off, TSRW5 is one of our router bits. So we have that in the kit. You will need a reducing collet with this one. And the router bit I'm using 3/8, almost 4mm. And when I cut the top off here, 2 passes. So, if I mark the centre of the joint, let me explain first. This box has been made with the same technique as those other boxes. The only thing I've done here is I've sanded off the end of all the joints. Everything is nice and square. The top's been flattened. My feet are all exactly the same size. So the box is actually basically ready for the finishing touches. So all I need to do now is cut the top off it. So my mark is there. I'm going to set the height of the router bit to half the thickness of the material, or thereabouts, which is close enough. And then I'm going to set my router bit, or the fence, to half. Make sure the router bit is in the centre of that mark. Okay, so I'm only cutting half the thickness, and there's a reason for that. Just let me get another piece of equipment that I forgot to get out earlier. You'll need a sleeve and some tape and a pair of scissors for this task. So everything's locked in place, that's locked up, we're ready to cut. So ears on. Now cutting it this way, what I've got there is I've got a perfectly parallel cut all the way around the box. Okay, so it's perfect all the way around. And that's what we want. Now you can use a bandsaw, you can use a table saw, you can use a handsaw. There are many ways of cutting the top off the box. I find this easy. I haven't had to move away from my table, from my router table. I haven't had to go and set up a table saw. I haven't walked over to the bandsaw to do any work. Everything was done here just by changing a router bit. So I find this a very easy task when it comes to cutting tops off boxes. Okay, so now I'm raising the router bit. Leave your fence where it is. Raising the router bit so it's going to cut all the way through the material this time. Now, cut 3 sections. Ears on. Okay, so now I've cut 3 of the sections and you can see there is very little support in there. Okay, so there's nothing happening. I have 1 section to cut, which is this little bit here. Now if I just continued to cut that straight through there, what would happen is that piece there would jam across onto the router bit, and that would cause a lot of damage around here, which means I'd have to just spend a bit of time trying to fix it. So that's why I have a sleeve. Now my sleeve fits in there like so. All I've done is replace the material I just took out. Tape that into place. Now I'm using a fibre reinforced tape, so it's not going to move anywhere if I can get it undone. It's obviously an old bit of old roll, this one. Tape it all down. Just want to tape it in place so that it doesn't go anywhere when we do that final cut. Okay, so now we do the final cut. Ears on. have a perfect fitting lid, and you'll notice all my joints are the same size now. So they all look the same. You can hardly see the join. The same applies around the end. Everything is exactly the same and all the same size. So I have 5 minutes left. This is what I do with the lid and the base for the bottom part. Once I have all that done, I'm going to use my rounding over bit. This is the one that we sell in our kit. And I'm just going to round over some edges. And I do this to all of our desktop boxes and our trinket secrets boxes. Just you can see the box itself is quite sharp around the edges. Soften it and make it a little bit more delicate, particularly when you've got lots of different coloured timbers. Makes the box look just that little bit nicer. So my first task, set the height. Use the box to set the height so that I'm just underneath. If you want to put a step on it, by all means you just lift a little bit, but I don't particularly like the step on it. Should give me a nice cut. So ears on everybody. Okay, so that's basically softened the box and made it just that nice, a little bit nicer. So I've got nice rounded edges underneath the rebate from the foot, and nice rounded edges on the top. And next week we'll put some componentry in it. But I'll glue together these boxes. So I'll glue these ones here together, and I'll show you what they look like once they are all set up like this. And then we can fiddle around with the different types of internal componentry when we're working with it. So we might put a hinge on that one, a couple of hinges on that one. We might put some sleeves into these ones. We'll see how we go with the boxes, and if time allows it, get those sorts of things done and put a finish on it hopefully next week. So that'll be it for today. Have a good week, everybody. Don't forget, if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. That way you get a reminder, hit the bell, and we'll catch you on next Sunday. So are there any questions, Pamela, that you saw that we need answering?
No, they were answered. I just wanted to let Nathan know that if he wants to know more information about the jig, to give us a call.
Give us a call, or jump on the website and have a look through the website.
Yep.
Okay, so have a good week, everybody, and I will see you all next week.